Black Hollow Forest had always been a place of whispered warnings. The townsfolk spoke of strange figures seen between the trees, of unnatural silence, and of people who entered but never returned. At the heart of this cursed woodland stood the ruins of an ancient temple, its origins unknown. Some called it the Faceless Nest, claiming it had once housed a cult that had abandoned their identities for something far worse. Dr. Evelyn Carter had spent years chasing after legends. As an archaeologist obsessed with uncovering the hidden truths buried beneath folklore, she couldn't resist the mystery of the nest. When she found references to it in a forgotten manuscript, she knew she had to investigate. Gathering a small team, she prepared to enter the forbidden ruins, unaware that some myths were never meant to be unearthed. Evelyn sat in her dimly lit study, poring over a fragile manuscript she had purchased from a black market dealer. The pages were yellowed, the ink smudged, but the words sent a thrill of anticipation through her. The nameless ones wait beneath the waxen halls. The nest stirs and the faceless watch. To gaze upon them is to forget oneself. To be among them is to lose all that was. It was the most concrete evidence she had found about the Faceless Nest. Legends spoke of an ancient cult that had disappeared, leaving behind only faceless effigies and cryptic warnings. The idea of a civilization that had erased itself from history fascinated her. Determined to prove the nest's existence, she assembled a small team. Her research assistant Mark, a tech-savvy journalist named Rachel, and Elias, a local guide who knew more about Black Hollow Forest than he cared to admit. As they prepared their gear, Elias hesitated. "The forest doesn't let outsiders in easily," he warned. "It has a way of twisting paths, and if you hear whispers, you turn back, no matter what they say." Rachel smirked, adjusting her camera. "Creepy warnings always make the best stories." Evelyn felt a flicker of unease, but curiosity overpowered it. They set off into the forest, unaware of how deeply the nest had already begun to claim them. The deeper they walked into Black Hollow Forest, the more unnatural the silence became. Birds ceased their calls, and even the wind seemed to vanish. The trees twisted unnaturally, their bark marked with strange, wax-like growths. Rachel filmed everything, but her camera screen flickered with static. "Something's messing with my signal," she muttered. Elias led them cautiously forward. "We're close," he whispered. "It's watching." The ruins emerged through the mist, an ancient structure, its walls covered in melted wax, as if the building itself had been sculpted from dripping candles. A massive entrance yawned before them, carved with faceless figures, their hands raised in silent supplication. Evelyn felt her heart pound. The nest was real. Inside, the ruins smelled of decayed wax and something sickly sweet. The walls bore strange symbols, their meanings lost to time. As Evelyn ran her fingers over an inscription, the whispering began. At first, it was faint, like distant voices carried on the wind. Then, the words became clear. "Join us," Rachel spun around. "You heard that, right?" Mark nodded, his face pale. It wasn't just the wind. Evelyn forced herself to remain calm. She studied the inscriptions, realizing they were instructions, rituals of transformation. The faceless ones hadn't just vanished. They had become something else. Elias backed toward the entrance. "We should go." Then the whispers spoke his name. Elias vanished. One moment he was standing beside them. The next he was gone. His pack lay undisturbed, but his voice echoed through the corridors. Mark ran ahead, shouting his name. But the ruins shifted, the halls twisting like a living thing. Rachel checked her footage, but the moment of Elias's disappearance was nothing but static. "We have to find him," Evelyn said, though a cold dread filled her. The legend spoke of those who entered the nest never being seen again. The whispers grew louder. They found Elias's flashlight in a vast chamber filled with faceless statues. The figures stood in eerie poses, their blank faces turned toward the center of the room, where a massive waxen cocoon pulsed like a living thing. Then one of the statues moved. Rachel gasped as the faceless figure turned toward them, its head tilting unnaturally. It raised a hand, and for a brief moment, they saw its true nature. Its flesh was wax, its form shifting, the remnants of a human face barely visible beneath the smooth surface. Elias's voice came from it, pleading. "Help me!" Mark pulled Evelyn back as more figures stirred. The faceless ones were not statues. They were the lost. Rachel screamed as her skin began to tingle. Looking at her reflection in a broken shard of glass, she saw her features blurring. The wax was spreading, consuming her. Evelyn flipped through the manuscript, searching for a way to reverse it. The text described the transformation as irreversible. Those who entered the nest became part of it. Rachel clawed at her skin, but her fingers melted together. Her voice choked off as her mouth sealed shut. As Rachel collapsed, the cocoon at the center of the chamber split open. From within, something stirred. The nest mother had awoken. A massive figure, its body a shifting mass of faceless forms, emerged. The faceless ones knelt in reverence. Evelyn and Mark could only watch in horror as Rachel was pulled toward it, absorbed into its endless, undulating flesh. Mark ran, but the ruins changed around him, passages sealed shut, forcing him toward the nest mother. He turned to Evelyn. "We have to stop it." But Evelyn had seen the truth in the texts. There was no stopping the nest. There was only assimilation. Evelyn had one last chance. Using the symbols from the manuscript, she began a ritual of fire, an ancient spell meant to purge the nest. The faceless ones shrieked as flames erupted from the sigils she carved. The nest mother howled as its waxen body melted. Mark fell into the flames, his scream lost as he was consumed. Evelyn ran, the ruins collapsing behind her. Evelyn staggered out of the forest, her body covered in burns, her mind fractured. No one believed her story, but the whispers never left her. Days later, she looked into a mirror and gasped. Her reflection had no face. The nest was never destroyed. It merely waits, buried beneath the ruins. And those who hear its call will never be seen again.